So welcome to Go Green Wilmette's Simple Swaps for Low Waste Living. Tonight we have a really special guest, local Wilmette resident who I've known for about 4 years. She has been really inspirational to me throughout my low waste journey, and I know to probably many people on this call and to our community really at large. So I'm super excited for her to jump on and share all of her knowledge. There's going to be a lot of information, so I hope you have a pad of paper and a pencil to take notes. And I think she'll probably talk about this as well, but just make sure, if it's a lot of information, try to just, take a couple of things, make that into a routine and then move forward from there. We have Enid Smith, who's joining us tonight. She's going to introduce herself and then jump into her presentation and go ahead and ask questions throughout. So over to you, Enid.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. It means a lot to me that there's so much interest in this topic. It's been really important to me and my family. We've been working on reducing our waste in the home about 7 years now. 7 or 8 years we've been working on this. So just a little bit about myself. Like Nicole said, I live in Wilmette. I have 2 kids in the Wilmette Public Schools. I'm a professional dancer by trade, and I've been teaching at Dance Center Evanston for 14 years. I also teach at a studio in the city. So that's the rest of my life is like the arts and dancing. So I got into this idea of reducing waste around the home in kind of an interesting way. I actually was taking my daughter to story hour at the Wilmette Public Library. And I wasn't terribly interested in the story that they were reading the kids. So I randomly grabbed a book off the shelf at the library and was reading it during the story hour. And it was a book about going zero waste. And it just really resonated with me. It made so much sense to me. I kind of want to get the zero waste thing to the side a little bit. I think it's intimidating. I think it's a little unrealistic. So I think looking at this from a low waste or step by step achieving a low waste lifestyle is a better way to look at it than thinking zero waste. And if I don't have, only this much garbage at the end of the year, then I failed. My house is not zero waste. My house is lower waste than it was 8 years ago and lower waste than maybe when I go to my siblings' houses. So sometimes I get frustrated and I think I'm not doing enough. And then you are doing enough. We are doing enough because we're always working on it. And it's a game. I think something that keeps us going on this journey is that it's fun. It's a fun game that we play as a family, and we fail all the time. And when we fail, it's okay, that was a disaster. Let's fix that next time. Or what's another step? Or what's another way we can tackle this problem? I think if you see it as a chore or as something you have to do, or you either succeed or you fail, then it's just not as much fun. So we try to look at it as this game and what's the next step in the game. Like I just said, I'm not claiming expertise in this area. I am an explorer in this area. I'm not claiming perfection. So I also want to share with you tonight things that I have not figured out, or ways that I have failed, and how maybe some of you will have suggestions for me. Yeah, so it's definitely a learn from each other, share with each other. I'm really interested in your questions, and I'm just giving you some ideas. And if you take 2 things from this presentation and are I could really do that, then that's great. If there's things that I talk about and you're there's no way I'm going to make that, or there's no way I'm going to go to that store, then that's okay too. It's all just idea sharing. COVID has made this really hard. I just want to put that out there at the front, because a lot of the things that I felt I had really figured out, COVID changed it. And so it's a setback, and we are kind of trying to find our way again a little bit in grocery shopping, especially. Grocery shopping is not fun anymore for me. I hate going, but it's getting better, and there are still ways to do this low waste living, even with the restrictions on shopping. So before I get into, like, I'm going to break this up into kind of room by room in my house. And Nicole, if you have, when questions come up, to speak up. There's something like a little quote, very short, just like 3 bullet points of how to live a low waste lifestyle. And it's eat real food, refuse single-use plastics, and use what you already have. And I think bringing the whole idea of this lifestyle like down to 3 points is helpful, instead of like, I have to do all these things. It's like, I need to eat real food as much as possible, say no to things I don't need, is pretty much what it comes down to. And even just doing those things will make a difference. So I'm going to start in my kitchen. It's where I spend most of the time. It's the smallest room in my house, and it's where all 4 of us always exist. Reusables in the kitchen. I think it starts with like coffee, like make your own coffee. I love to go out for coffee. I hate reusable coffee or disposable coffee cups. So I have not gone out for coffee very much in the past 2 years, but I think something as simple as like, you know what, I'm going to make my own coffee today. It's a big money saver, and it's also a big waste saver. I just had a thought and it went away, but that's okay, because it'll come back. And that's why I want questions to come during the presentation too, because you guys will remind me of things that I have forgotten. So speaking of like coffee being, making your own coffee being a money saver and a big waste saver, I think that thinking of disposables in your house as money, as in something that you bought and you paid for, and then you bought something to throw that thing away, is kind of eye-opening. We don't buy paper towels. I don't buy Ziploc bags. We don't buy plastic wrap. And if I think of like the money that I would spend on, you know, I send 2 sandwiches with my 2 kids to lunch for school every day. So that's 2 Ziploc bags every day that I'm paying for just to be thrown away. Kind of like, well, I wouldn't just throw that money in the garbage, so maybe I can find another way to package that food up. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit, of how I pack a school lunch. So all those things that are single use, and all those things that we use them all the time. Like I said, plastic wrap is a big one that we're just like, I'm just not going to buy it anymore. And we're so used to this stuff that we use it without thinking. And if we start thinking of it, and one way to think of it is as a monetary thing, I think that can help a little bit in being like, maybe I'm not going to use that anymore. Maybe I'm not going to throw that money away.
So Enid,
yeah.
I have a question actually, or something for you. Going back to the coffee cup, you know, making your own coffee because of the disposables, I've found that Central Station Coffee is taking, you know, our own reusable coffee cups. So have you found other coffee shops are now starting to take those as well?
It is coming back. Backlot on Central Street, you can use your own mug there. My husband is sitting off screen. I'm looking to him for help. Just reprise, take your own cup. All that stuff is coming back. Yeah, it's getting so much better. Yeah. So taking your own mug is coming back, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and even a lot of places have their own mugs too. If you just ask them, they'll use the you know, the china that they have there.
Yeah, you know what? Starbucks will do that if you ask them. They don't. They look at you like you're crazy. And I'm not a big Starbucks person, but you can go in there and say, I want a mug for here, and they do that. And getting used to asking for things is also something that's a big part of this lifestyle. It's like not being afraid to speak up. And I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but it's been a really good lesson for my kids. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and it's been good for them to speak up for, you know, can I have this in a different way? Can I have this with no bag? But also to say no to things. And I think saying no to things is something I was going to get to later, but just being like, I don't need that bag, or no, I don't want that straw, or no, I don't want that free sample. So it does take a little bit of like being a vocal person, and it's hard to say no, and it's something that we learn and practice, but it gets easier. Yeah. So one of the first things that we did when we started this journey, when we were like, okay, we want to lower the waste in our house, what are we gonna do first? One of the first things we did was start composting. And we have tried the whole gamut. Like we did the vermicomposting and it was a little not so great. And then we don't have a yard, so we can't do like the backyard compost pile. But doing the compost pickup service for us has been amazing. We do on every other week. Collective Resource comes and picks up our compost. And it's changed, it changes more than just like the food waste. It also, like, we don't buy plastic garbage bags anymore, because anything that was like wet or fruit, like that would you need to put in plastic in your garbage bag, now goes in the compost. So we haven't bought garbage bags in 7 years. And also our garbage disposal broke, and we were like, we don't need that anymore. So we got rid of it because no food goes down the drain. So just like doing that composting simplified some other, it has kind of a ripple effect through the rest of our kitchen, which has been really nice. It stinks and it's kind of gross, but it's also the reality of like food rot, and rot is important, and that is part of life. And so we have like a small thing on our counter, and then we keep the big bucket out in the garage, and we take it out twice a day probably. Certain seasons are worse than others, but composting has been a really big part of this, and it was one of the first things that we tackled. And I also think composting does not have to just be in the kitchen. We also keep a compost bin in the bathroom, and here we go. I said it's kind of gross, but like the hair from the drain, or if you use like your cotton swabs that don't have any plastic in them, all that stuff can go in the compost. Cleaning out the hairbrush. So we actually use a compost bin in our bathrooms and in our kitchen. So the compost leads nicely into fighting food waste. It just makes me sick when I see food get thrown away. And I also think of this as kind of a game. I don't throw anything away. Like when things start to go bad, we cook it, or we freeze it, or we make garbage soup with it, or we make a pasta or a quiche that has like all of that in it. And I think before you go to the grocery store, like if you start in your refrigerator and think, what do I already have, instead of what am I hungry for, then do I want to eat tonight? Like we always start with what we already have first. There's, half of a kind of wrinkly eggplant in the fridge. Okay, we're gonna have baba ganoush. Like start with what you already have in the fridge, and then not all that has to go in the compost because it gets eaten up and there's less food waste. So yeah, it's hard for me I hear the stories of like kids at school, like, oh, I don't like this lunch, throw it all away. And I'm like, no, don't throw away the food. So fighting food waste is another fun little game, and it's led to some interesting recipes. That's also part of the monetary thing. It's like you paid for it, you bought it, use it up, and be creative in how you use it. And that actually kind of leads nicely into cooking at home is, I think, the best way to reduce your waste at home. Just cook. Like it doesn't have to be fancy. I have this pasta jar I was going to display to you guys today, and then I made dinner. Now it's halfway empty because my kids ate it all tonight. But cooking, just simple food, cook what you already have. And the takeout garbage, it's gotten so bad over COVID because I know it's hard. Like we want to support the restaurants, and we have done takeout over the past 2 years to support the places we love. And I do have a bunch of these little plastic containers that I'm trying to reuse. But just cooking your own food makes such a difference. And this is one of those things that I know people are divided. I hate to cook. So maybe, and that kind of ties nicely into it. So just make your own coffee, like just these little things that you can make at home instead of buy out makes a big difference too. Takeout, something that I was really getting into before lockdown was the idea of getting takeout, but taking my own containers to bring it home in. And that's part of that speaking up thing. It's really hard to be brave enough to ask for that. And you can do it, and you find the places that will let you do it. And I actually had success doing this like maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was just like, oh, finally again. I went and ordered 2 orders of pad thai and like took my own big glass jar and they put it right in there for me. And it's so nice to come home and be like, I have this Thai food that I don't know how to make at home, but I have it without the styrofoam and the bags and the plastic sauce containers and all that. So I think not being afraid to ask and not being afraid to be told no is something to keep in mind. Some people are going to say no, and then you try, right? Sushi is also a thing that, like, we love sushi. The containers for sushi are a nightmare. I was getting into a thing where I would go to a sushi place and order it for here and then just put it all in my own container and bring it home. And that works. Like, you get creative and people, you know, sometimes you get a little side eye, but at least you don't have all the plastic going into your garbage at the end of the night. So that's part of that, like getting creative and not being afraid to speak up for what you're really looking for. I wanted to talk about some things that I haven't figured out yet in the kitchen. There's just some things that we love. My husband loves cottage cheese. We have made it before, and it is really interesting to make, and it's also really labor intensive. And if you like to make your own cheese, we've tried all of this stuff, and there are some things that are worth it to make, and there's some things where it's just like, I'm just gonna buy it from the store. And you know, miso, cottage cheese, potato chips are really hard to make, so we get them occasionally. We get them as a treat. I will say the first couple of years of this journey, making all that stuff was really fun, and then after a while, you're just like, I can't do it anymore, and that's okay too. Like, you figure out the things that you can make yourself, and you can find other ways, and there's always gonna be something that, like, you just can't figure out another way to get it. There's something else I was gonna say. We made tofu once, and it was so interesting. It was so labor intensive, and it took so much water that now when I do buy tofu, I think about, like, this is really uses a lot of water, and it's you learn so much about food when you do make it. And I'm like, wow, we should probably eat less tofu because it uses so much water. So, you know, you win some, you lose some, and even when you lose some, you learn something along the way. There's so many other things. Oh, I will say, my husband does make all of our bread, which is such a treat, and I love him for that. Bread was another one of the first things that when you're like, let's try this, we said, how can we buy bread without the plastic bag? And I don't know if you can still do this at Whole Foods, but we were taking like a bag and just taking the loaf and putting it in a bag. There's ways to get bread without the plastic. We've started making it, something that we like, and we're sticking with it, but I know there's things that you just can't keep up. And he wanted me to say too that he started making bread before COVID and the sourdough starter kick. So he says he was doing it before it was cool or something like that. Nicole, any questions, or should I just keep going?
No questions, but I'll just add on with regards to the bread, because I love that you guys make yours. For people who, you know, if you go to like Hume Bakery, or Enid mentioned Whole Foods, like I bring my own bag with me, and I just ask them to hand it to me, which they do, and I slip it into my bag and bring it home. So that's another option. It's paper. If you do compost, then you can actually compost that paper bag if you end up taking it.
Yeah. Another like fun side effect of all this is that I feel like the smaller local businesses are the ones that are more sympathetic. And I have found myself very much in the past 7 years gravitating towards places like Hume and Backlot and when we buy like deli meats or cheese, we go to Dave Zier on Ridge, and he will slice the cheese for us and put it right into our container. So you kind of build these relationships with like the smaller local businesses, which is a really nice kind of perk of this too. Definitely building those relationships. So I think I'll move on then to, I have some stuff to show here, but I think I'll do that with another section. But the other kind of thing that I think of as like a fail, but my kids want things sometimes, right? And they're really good about the way we shop and the way we eat, but yesterday my daughter was like, I really want some Chips Ahoy. and I bought them. Like, I'm not gonna be the mom who won't break the rule once in a while. I don't think that's healthy either. So like I said, our house is not like the zero waste Instagram house that is, you know, has not a drop of plastic in it, but sometimes I do give in to the treats, which I think is important and healthy. So I'll move on and talk about some things I do in like for personal care and in the bathroom. I have some examples of some stuff here. One of the easiest things that I've done, this is like this is the kind of thing that like simple swap right here was we switched to all bar soap everywhere in the house. I use a shampoo that's a bar. This is a bar shampoo that I use. Our dishwashing soap is a bar. I brought a little example of that too. So I use this to wash dishes in the sink. Just have like a dish brush. Gets a little messy, but this is a beautiful brand new one. They don't stay this way, but we do that for dishes. So all bar soap in our house, and that gets rid of those plastic pump soap dispensers. And frankly, I'm also not a big fan of antibacterial soap because I think bacteria is good for us in some ways. So I think that's been easy to do with the bar soap. My whole family has switched to a bamboo toothbrush, and I use these toothpaste tabs, which I really like actually. They just look like aspirin, and they come totally plastic free. That's been a good find. So just all these like different options of things that you use: toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, like just finding another creative solution for it. Let's see what else I have. I also have these. This is like a mouthwash tab. I will say I don't like these very much. If we were in person, I'd give them to somebody. Same idea as the toothpaste tab. So you don't have that big plastic container. They smell really good actually. That big plastic container doesn't have to be thrown out when you're done with them. See, some plastic-free. I'm always looking for like plastic-free beauty products. I think even before I get into that, one of the things that's been great about this is instead of looking for replacement of everything, looking for things that I don't need anymore and just simplifying my whole routine. Instead of having, 20 lipsticks or something, I'm into, something like this that comes in a compostable packaging. And, maybe you have 2 of these instead of 20 other old lipsticks in your drawer. I can't see who's all here, so I don't know what our breakup is of like male, female. But I think it's important to talk about like feminine hygiene products is another way you can make some changes. There's all sorts of options with that, with like Diva Cup and plastic-free like tampons and stuff like that. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but all that stuff is out there. It's all out there, and I'll talk a little bit about where I find these things too. We use a floss that comes in a paper container, which is really nice. The floss itself is not compostable, but at least I get rid of that plastic container. That is another thing I wanted to talk about. Is kind of sometimes I feel like I have to choose the lesser of 2 evils in things, or not evils, but just like there's no perfect solution to something. And so it's like, okay, I could buy, there is like vegan compostable floss. I could seek it out, but I find this and I'm like, okay, this is a good start. So be nice to yourself about maybe not making the perfect choice all the time, but making one that's like better than what you used before, a step in the right direction, or just something that works for you. Something that I've been really happy with is this deodorant that I use. And it does not come in this jar. I actually bought this new one today, so it looks pretty for this presentation. But this is a deodorant that I use, and it's just like it feels kind of like soap. This one has a scent to it, but they also make it an unscented. So I've been using that for years now. Love it. I've tried a lot of different ones. There's also deodorants that come in like packaging like this. That's like a compostable packaging. I like this one because it's totally package free. Let's see. I want to talk about. I think just simplifying things is really a great place to start. And I also, wanted to go on to the fails. I use this. Not everyone in my house uses this. There's a plastic shampoo bottle in my shower. We do refill it from like a bulk shampoo bottle, but like I said, being the mom who never gives treats, I also have a little leeway on some products. Like my husband likes a different shampoo. I'm not gonna force everyone to use exactly what I use, but I think it still sets a good example for everyone else in the household. Some fails, I call them fails. I don't know, I don't really like that word, but I did try to like stop using like Kleenex or tissue, and I went out and I to the thrift store, the antique mall when it used to be there, and bought some adorable hankies. It just didn't fit. It just didn't sit with me. I know some people who are like, I love it. I always carry a hanky. I tried. I couldn't keep it up. So I'm going to be nice to myself on that one and let that one go too. The other thing, let's see, fails that I have like tissues. There are like, we have like a dandruff or like a medicated shampoo that we, like I'll use this some days and then switch them out. So it's not perfect, but we're working on it. Here's another product I wanted to show you. I don't wear a lot of makeup, but I do like my mascara. And this is funny because this is how it always used to be. This was like before the mascaras we know now. They used to come in these like pancakes almost. So I think these are fun. They take a little bit of getting used to, but it's a way to do like a plastic-free makeup. So you have like your little brush and you get a little wet, and then it feels very of another time, which is kind of fun. So I think I'll talk about shopping. Shopping is big, yeah.
Can you tell us, I think you mentioned a couple of places, but just list just a couple of the places of where you buy some of these products?
Yeah. So bar soap is easy, like Whole Foods has package-free bar soap. Actually, Nicole, you introduced me to this store. I have been shopping a lot at a store in Chicago called Nikola Flamingo, and they are a zero-waste grocery store. So you can bring your own containers for everything. They actually opened during the pandemic. It's right off the Rockwell Brown Line stop. So like these toothpaste tabs I bought there, but some of these things you can also get like a subscription to. There's a company called Bite that does a subscription, and you can get like, they'll mail you a new packet every 6 weeks or something like that. Good news about Nikola Flamingo though, they are opening an Evanston store. And I asked them specifically if I could kind of break this news because they haven't really gone public with it. But Nikola Flamingo, which is the zero waste grocery store, it's a woman-owned business. They are going to be moving into, I think they signed the lease, I'm not sure, downtown Evanston, where, let's see, Other Brother Coffee House was there. Now it's the Plant Shop. There was like a Subway next door. And that, if all goes well, is going to be a zero waste grocery store in downtown Evanston, which I think is really exciting. So all of these products will be easier to get closer to you. My husband reminded me that like these cleaning brushes, we get them at Millen Hardware. And so sometimes like the smaller, kind of more old time hardware stores will have a lot of this stuff, or like, you know, cotton napkins and dishwashing brushes and like stuff like this, like you can just get at the hardware store. This is I use it as a baking soda shaker. So maybe instead of shopping, I'll move on to cleaning. This is what I'm talking about. I use baking soda. Yeah.
Oh, so the brush, do you, when you're done with it, when it's reached its end of life, do you compost the handle?
I'm getting a nod from the dishwasher in the house.
Yeah.
Compost the handle. Correct me if I'm wrong. The bristles have to be, no?
No, they're connected.
So the whole thing is compostable except for the middle, right? So you kind of take it apart, which is the same thing I do with the toothbrush. They do make a completely compostable toothbrush. This one is not. This one, the handle is compostable, and the bristles I do tear out. I just use the pliers and rip them out, and then I put the handle in the compost. Something that I hear a lot is that, oh, these don't last very long. But that's kind of the point, because a plastic one will last. They will last forever. And so that idea of like, I'm going to have to replace it, that is kind of how things should be if things are not going to last. I mean, you don't want a plastic dishbrush that's going to last forever. You want one like this that will not last forever, I think. So something to consider. This is another style of brush. I think this is also just from the hardware store. So clean my sink, baking soda, brush. Baking soda is like a wonder. I use it for a lot of things. You can use it as toothpaste, you can use it as a cleaner, you can use it to exfoliate in the shower. We kind of have these scattered around our house. Guess it's not technically plastic free, it has this little lid, but we use a lot of this. We use vinegar a lot to clean with. There's so many recipes online that you can try different cleaning products. There's books at the library about making your own cleaning products. The library is a really good zero waste tool actually too. I'm a big fan of the library. We don't really buy books. I know there's book lovers who are like, I need to own my books, but I'm very happy with taking a book and then sending it back. I think that cleaning takes a while. I think you have to be up for the game. Like I said earlier, you have to be ready to experiment and try things and add some essential oil if you don't like the smell or things like that. So it's definitely trial and error, definitely. Let's see, what else do I have here to share with you? I think I'll talk about shopping. Shopping has gotten a little bit harder in the last 2 years. The bulk section at Whole Foods breaks my heart now. It's decimated. You can still get like beans and rice there, but it's maybe a third of what it used to be, I feel like. You can't bring, I used to bring my own tub for peanut butter. It's hard for me to go into that bulk section now. But like I said, there are other places to get the bulk things. You can get your beans and rice, your grains at Whole Foods. Like I said, this zero waste grocery store that I'm a big fan of, I get, loose tea and dried fruit and different kinds of salts and coffee and everything, all sorts of dry goods I can get there. I buy, this is how I buy my olive oil. I take it and fill this up. So they tear the jar and then fill this up, and I can do this with olive oil. I can do this with vegetable oil and vinegars. Some places you can do it with like honey and maple syrup. Nicole and I used to kind of do seasonal pilgrimages to this place in Oak Park. That's an amazing food co-op, and they have a wonderful bulk section. It's far, so we would kind of take a group and then really stock up. But there is in the works a food co-op for, and you may have heard of like Wild Onion Market. I'm an owner of Wild Onion Market, which doesn't really exist yet, but that is hopefully coming. And I have voiced my opinion to them that the bulk department is essential to a good food co-op, and I think they agree. So maybe when that store is built, I think they're looking for a site. They're looking for like a South Evanston, Rogers Park, or like West Ridge location. So that brings things a little closer to home for this kind of shopping. For buying things like beans, and I buy my pasta in bulk from Nikola Flamingo, rice, any kind of dry goods. The bags I wanted to talk about, because I think that I love these bags. These are these like kind of mesh bags I find off Etsy. I've had them for years. I use them all the time. I have some that are not mesh that I put, like there's loose tea in here. But they look pretty with produce in them. I'm not a big like germaphobe. I don't mind if my produce touches each other. So I usually just throw everything in my shopping bag. But I think people who like to keep things separate, these mesh bags are really great. These are from Etsy, from a shop called Love of Earth. What else did I want to shop? Oh, I think there is this idea that you have to go to a fancy grocery store to shop this way. Whole Foods is kind of fancy. Nikola Flamingo is kind of far and kind of, they're not fancy, but it's, not convenient for everyone. But I also do a lot of shopping at like Valley in Evanston. I love that store. And while they may not have like a bulk department, buying your vegetables without packaging is a great way to start shopping zero waste. Just don't use the plastic bags. My lettuce is wet and I put it in with my avocados. I don't really think that matters. I think my avocados are fine. Like I just throw everything together. I figure we wash everything before we eat it anyway. But just skipping the produce bags, I think is a great start.
And the name of the place in Oak Park is Sugar Beet.
Sugar Beet Food Co-op. And I think they're just a really great example of like, I mean, Wild Onion Market, which is in the works, I think looks to Sugar Beet a lot for inspiration and guidance. And I'm hoping and I'm imagining that Wild Onion will look something like that. Maybe there's someone from the Wild Onion team on this meeting. That would be interesting. So I think also with back to like the lesser of two evils, shopping can be a game with that a lot. At Valley, when I go to buy bananas, the organic bananas have tape around them that says organic, but the non-organic bananas are package free. So do I support organic or do I buy package free? And I don't have an answer for that. And I don't always make the same choice. I kind of go back and forth. It's hard to have a perfect answer for some of this stuff. You know, sometimes I'm like, I really need to support organic farming. It's important to me. I'll forgive the plastic tape. And sometimes I'm like, I can't deal with the plastic tape. I'm just going to buy the regular bananas. So sometimes it's like making the best choice for the moment.
Actually, on that note, there was a question. Your perspective on trade-offs. For example, if you could get a package-free bar soap from a big place like Whole Foods, or support a small business who packages their soap, but this place may have fewer emissions because it's local. Do you all think about these trade-offs? How do you decide?
I think about this stuff all the time. And like I just said with the bananas, like I don't always make the same choice. I will say that I've been a little bit less of a fan of Whole Foods since Amazon bought it. I just feel like, I don't know. I really am like I really do like to champion the smaller businesses. There's so many other things to look at too. There's like package-free soap, but then it has palm oil. Like there's so many aspects to all of this, and you learn, and you think you found a perfect solution, and then someone says, oh, but that's not, you know, good for the environment because of this. And so your choices are always changing. I think that I tend to go for the small business owners. I think that's important, but the decision is not something I make one time. Like every time we're like, okay, what should we do? It sounds tiresome, but it's not really, because it's every purchase is like a conscious purchase. And it's like, we are not vegan. And I have a lot of people say, you should be vegan. That's a great thing to do for the environment. Yes, it is. It doesn't work for my family. So it's like one person's answer is great and it helps. And then another person's answer is different, but it also helps. So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at like every purchase decision and make the best choice for your household, really.
Yeah, I agree. One other question is, I know this is your answer, because I remember talking to you about this or talking to you when I first met you, and I was like, what? But how do you buy grapes? And since they often come in the plastic, atrocious bag.
Well, I have often taken like a bag like this and just taken the grapes. I take like a little handful from all the different, they're sold by weight anyway. I don't understand why they have to bag them up. It's sold by weight. So when they have a plastic bag of apples, it's sold by weight. So you can take 2 apples out of that and put it in your bag. I think it's another thing to look for is like, how is this sold? If it's by weight, you can take whatever you want. If they're selling it by the bag, that's different. So I will take grapes and put them in my own bag. Another side note, I believe, and my husband maybe can correct me, that now that if you go to Whole Foods and you do your self-checkout, they won't give you a hard time about bringing your own bags anymore. I think if you go to a person, they'll be like, oh, we don't really want you to bring your own bag, but just go to the self-checkout, and then you're doing your own checking out anyway, so you get away with more. I have started this summer. I've been working at the Wilmette Farmers Market. I've been selling fruits and vegetables for Freilich farmers from Michigan, and that's where I get my grapes now. It's awesome. So it's another thing, like the more I want to learn about this, it also like leads me to these small businesses and even like small farmers. And now I'm like, gosh, if I really want to get like fresh produce package free, I might as well just work at the market and then I can take it home, and then I can eat all the ugly produce that no one wants. And it's really been this like snowball effect for me. Yeah, but I think that's another thing, like not being afraid to be told no. So you put your grapes in your own container and someone at the checkout says, don't do that. Be like, okay, I won't do it next time, but they're not going to make you put your grapes back.
And I remember you also telling me like you would try to buy more, not so much, I mean, in season, but when it comes to like berries, because it comes in the clamshells.
Yeah,
you would,
I don't buy berries when they're not in season. I don't expect this from people. I mean, I don't expect anything, but like, this is something that I feel strongly about, that I know that other people are like, that's too far for me. I don't buy berries from the grocery store.
yeah.
I don't like the clamshell. I think they taste terrible. I buy them from the farmer's market when they're in season, and they're amazing. And then I freeze some of them, and it's worth it to me to eat in season and have food taste really good.
Yeah, ever since you had said that to me, and it was like a big waste reduction for our household. I mean, we still do buy them, but not as much. I'll try to go to the plums or the pears or, you know, other things that are package free and just make that kind of.
Yeah, it's interesting how the cooking, how this leads you, like you learn so much. You're like, I really don't want to buy blueberries in that container. Then what else? And maybe I'm going to cook with apricots instead. And so you really do learn a lot just from the kind of forced exploration of like, I can't do that anymore. I have something else. And I think that's an extreme view that I'm like, I'm not buying berries ever. That's an extreme view, but maybe buy less of them. And then they're so good when they're in season. It's so amazing. Yeah. I think another big thing about shopping is, like I mentioned earlier, saying no. Like, I don't need that free tote bag you're handing out today. No, I don't need the free sample. Yeah, saying no. I guess I'm kind of repeating myself, but it happens a lot in the grocery store. Buy one, buy one, get one. Oh, if I buy that other one, I'm going to go to waste. I'm never going to eat that much. Like, just not being afraid to say no, which I think is a really good lesson for all of us in life in general. Let's see. And here's another thing. I wrote down a thought about respecting when other people say no too. I've noticed a lot. So I have a 10-year-old, so lots of like birthday parties and stuff. And I've noticed a lot lately that people are more and more saying gifts are not necessary. I think we have so much guilt, and we feel guilty if we don't give something. But I think respecting also when people are like, no, I don't need that, or no gifts, please. I think it's important too, because they're trying to do the same thing, and they're trying to keep things simple and reduce waste, and like learn to say no and learn to be okay with being told no too.
Another question come in.
Yeah.
How do you buy your cheese?
So cheese is hard. So I did mention that we go to Zier's Butcher they have a deli too on Ridge, and we have developed enough of a relationship that they know that we bring like a big, like a Tupperware, and they will slice the cheese and put it right in there. So for sliced cheeses, that's what we do. Cheese is hard. We buy cheese. I try to avoid, like, I don't buy pre-shredded cheese. I don't buy, I try to buy the cheese that's just wrapped in the film. Cheese is really hard. That's definitely a thing that we have not perfected, but I am proud of that we found a way to get our deli cheese sliced. I do think that if I went to the butcher and said, can I just have a hunk of cheddar? Like, they slice the cheddar, so why wouldn't they just cut you like a 2-inch piece? I need to, that's like my next thing I need to do, is start buying cheese that way. Yeah. We also, like little things, we eat a lot of cream cheese. We buy it I don't buy the cream cheese in the tub. I buy it in the foil, in the box instead. That makes a difference, I think.
Now, what about, one more question. What about, is it better to buy, if you're going to buy something in plastic, is it better to buy like a larger, like a gallon size plastic, and then, for instance, hand soap, and then fill the smaller?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. This is why I wanted questions throughout. So lotion and shampoo are two things that I was like, we're going to buy lotion from the food co-op in my own container. But then I was like, well, when you're buying it from the food co-op, it's in a jug like this big, and you're pumping it into your own jar. Why don't I just buy that jug? Like, the reality of it is, when a lot of these places you're buying from in bulk, that food comes in plastic anyway. So you're reducing the waste by bringing your own container and buying only what you need. But if you're going to use what do we buy, a gallon? We buy a gallon tub of body lotion because we tried making lotion and it was a disaster. It's like our clothes started smelling rancid. It was a complete disaster to try to make lotion. So yeah, I do think it is smarter and it's just more economical to buy a large like bulk container. So like for lotion or shampoo or like for olive oil, like buy a big one, cheaper too.
And then do you make your own laundry detergent?
So I can buy it from this same company. This is actually a Chicago-based company, Meliora. So they make this dishwashing soap. They also make laundry detergents, all sorts of household cleaning products. And they're a Chicago-based company. I can get laundry detergent in my own container, like by the scoop at Nikola Flamingo. The other thing for laundry detergent is I think I hesitate. I don't want to sound like I'm not judging anyone's choices at home. I'm just telling you it works for me. I don't use like the pods. Like I think that's just not for me. So if we do buy laundry detergent, we try to buy like powder in a cardboard box rather than buying like a plastic jug or rather than buying like pods or stuff like that. So anytime I can keep it in like a cardboard box, and sometimes in the cardboard box, it's in a little plastic bag. There's so many hurdles. But that's one of those like kind of choosing the one that works the best for you. But we have been buying laundry detergent in our own container. You tried to make it.
I did.
Yeah, I think that was another thing that we're like, this doesn't work for us. Yeah. A lot of trials.
And I think with things like that too, you have to be careful because it's going through the dishwasher or your laundry machine. And I've just read and seen issues with that. So making your own. So you have to be really careful with that.
Yes, absolutely. That was what happened when I tried to make, before I started using these toothpaste tablets, I was making like a toothpaste, I was making a toothpaste and it had coconut oil in it and it was awful. Like it clogged up the drain. It was a disaster. And then I started making a tooth powder, which I actually really liked and I would still be using if I hadn't found these. But like a dry powder that doesn't have those like drain clogging ingredients in it. So that works better for me. The other thing I wanted to mention with shopping is I am a huge fan of shopping secondhand. I'm such a believer in buying secondhand first. It's just, it feels so good to buy something that you know wasn't, I don't know, it's not new, it's had another life, it has a history, and I am a fan of secondhand anywhere from like Goodwill, which I buy a lot of things that I need, and all the way up to like North Shore Exchange, which is like high-end designer resale. Like, I'm a huge fan of secondhand clothes, secondhand furniture, secondhand. My garden pavers, my little pathway in my yard is secondhand stone. It's amazing what you can find secondhand, and I just think it's such a great way to shop. Everything I'm wearing today is secondhand. I wanted to prove my point there. The rug I'm standing on is secondhand. I could just like go around the house and all the secondhand stuff. I have even one time I put out, I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I put out a thing on Facebook a few years ago. I was like, I just thought about all the products that people have sitting around their house. They buy things, they don't use them. And I had real short hair at the time and I wanted to like play with some products. And I put out on Facebook, does anyone have any, hair products they don't use? And people were like, oh my gosh, I bought this, I never use it, you can have it for $3. Oh my gosh, and I have like even hair products secondhand. Not like used up, but like stuff that people buy and they never open. I've bought like secondhand perfume, we've bought secondhand appliances. Like I'm just a really big fan of secondhand shopping.
On that note, what do you think about buy nothing groups?
Oh, where it's like
a year long, try not to buy anything.
Oh gosh,
I'm assuming.
I wish. I haven't done it. I think those things are fun. I think it's a good challenge. It's a little gimmicky. I think it's better to get into like a buy less forever than buy nothing for a year. I think it's better way to look at things. But I mean, if that's something that inspires you, if you're the kind of person who loves a challenge, like I don't like do cleanses or go to boot camp or stuff like that. So I'm not really one of those people who likes to challenge. So I like to look at it as like something that I will build up and do for a long time, rather than I'm going to do this for a month or I'm going to do this for a year and then go back to the way I was. Yeah. But you know, different strokes for different folks, right? I just have a couple more things. Where are we? Oh, we're kind of running long. I'm going to just say real quick a couple of things. We'll open up for questions, but I don't want to keep everyone too long. Like I said, I don't use paper towels. We just keep rags around the house. They're not pretty, but they do the job. And people are like, don't you do so much laundry then? And I'm like, I have kids. We do laundry every day anyway. I might as well use rags and wash them. We've been using rags for years, and then all the old t-shirts become rags, and that's been great for us. We try to line dry our clothes in the laundry as much as possible. I actually bought a secondhand like clothes drying rack, and whatever we can hang to dry, we'll do that. I think that's most of what I wanted to say. In conclusion, I just wanted to remind everyone a few things. I think it's important to remember that it's a game, and you can always, what's that? Oh, you remind me of one more thing to show. It's always a game. I think it's important to expect like the setbacks and the restarts. I mean, COVID was like a massive setback, but it's like, okay, things will get better. And it's like, that's what we're going through now. I think it's really fun to involve your kids in this, if you have kids, and involve your family. My daughter came home from school yesterday and she said, oh, the girl next to me had the coolest lunchbox. And it was one of those Tiffins, those like stackable Tiffins. And that kind of stuff, like, let the kids see it and it's cool. And then another kid wants a Tiffin and it's like saving on packaging. So things like that, I think it's fun to involve your kids in your family. So before I say my last thing, I just want to show you, like, this is kind of how I pack my kids' school lunch. Like this is not a sandwich, it's a book, but I'll wrap a sandwich in a napkin without any plastic underneath. It stays perfectly well. I'll throw in a piece of whole fruit and then like something in a jar. And then this all goes in a bag like this, only bigger. And so they bring the napkin home at the end of the day and a jar and a bag, and it all gets used again the next day. So it's a really easy way to pack a school lunch. The last thing I wanted to say is that I think it can be discouraging because you think of zero waste being like what you see on Instagram and everyone with the jars and it's all perfect. And I just wanted to use this analogy, like what real life is like. Like, I set up this Zoom space for tonight. It looks kind of clean and nice. If I turned the camera like 2 inches one way or another, you'd see like a huge pile of laundry and you'd see like someone's schoolwork, and like this is not real, and neither is someone's zero waste Instagram. And like, don't compare yourself to what social media tells you zero waste looks like, because it's not really what zero waste looks like, and it's going to look different for every person. So I think we should open up to questions. I think I got through everything I wanted. I thought I talked for like 35 minutes, and
So much good information.
Yeah.
On that note, the person who asked about the buy nothing groups, I think they meant like the virtual yard sales. There's so many.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I did. I think that stuff is great. I think like free cycle and all that kind of stuff. Often when I am looking for something, I'll just put on like on Instagram like is seeking out what, I don't know, is seeking out, I'm looking for a sleeping bag for my kids or something. And people just, they have stuff that they feel guilty about getting rid of, and they love to be like, oh my gosh, take this, I would love for you to have it. I think it's great that you would like trade and or that these online platforms make it easier for us to find like secondhand goods. I think it's great. Yeah.
Somebody said in the chat too, for like furniture and such, Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse is another great
Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse, and I had a list. This was part of the slides we didn't use, but Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse is now also going to be home to a store called The Waste Shed, which I am a huge fan of. It's in like down by Humboldt Park, it's on Chicago Avenue in Chicago, which is far. But it's a secondhand like arts and craft supply, it's secondhand like fabrics and paint supplies and jewelry making supplies. It's all secondhand. It's unbelievable. And they are moving into the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse site with them. They're going to share that space.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It's like a great place to go. Like if you're into knitting, like so much like yarn and fabric. I always go there before Halloween to get materials to make my kids' costumes. It's an amazing store, and they're moving to Evanston too. Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then what about, I don't think you have any pets, but any pointers on pet waste?
I do not. You should talk about this. I do not have a pet, and that is frankly one of the reasons I don't. Trust me, my kids are pushing hard for it. We had a bird for a while. This bird lived to be like an ungodly amount of years old, and it recently passed. So birds were kind of easy because some pet stores would have like bulk bird food you could buy. I don't have any feedback on like dogs and cats. So Nicole, if you have any, go ahead.
I mean, I use compostable bags, slightly better. And I've heard there are like, you can't put it in your like commercial composting. They don't want it. I've heard of pet waste composters. I have not dabbled in that arena, and I probably don't see myself doing that, but I know they do exist.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's a choice.
I do know it's a choice, right? I do know that this is kind of a one tiny little thing, but there's that pet store on Green Bay Road that you kind of have to go into the parking lot. It's like down by Jilly's.
Pet people.
I think they have like loose dog treats that you can buy in bulk. I think there's little things you can do, like if you can find lower waste dog food and stuff like that. But I am no expert, and hopefully I will not be an expert anytime soon, but we'll see how that goes.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see anything else in the Q&A. I don't think so. I mean, what's your advice just for like, somebody who's just starting out? They're maybe have made one or two swaps, like where they should start, how they should start.
I would start, I think the easiest things are stop the coffee cup, right? Like bring your own coffee cup when you go to the coffee shop, and the plastic bags at the grocery store. And so I work at the farmer's market, and it makes me a little crazy because people will come and they'll be like, oh, I brought my own bags, put them in the car, so just give me a plastic bag. And if you like hold yourself accountable and be like, I forgot my bag, I'm gonna go home and get it. You'll do that once, and then you will not forget your bags again, right? Like, so like commit to it. Don't be like, oh, when I remember. But I think bringing your own bag, I bring my own bag when I go to any store, whether it be like a clothing store or a bookstore, I always bring up the bag with me. Bags, coffee, bar soap.
Yeah.
What I start with.
Yeah. And I think also, just kind of poking around your house and looking and thinking about what might be the most kind of feasible swap that you can make that you think will last, whether that's the kitchen or the bathroom, like compostable toothbrush, that's just too much for my family to handle. So fine, we'll do other things in place of that. So just trying to find what you think is going to work for you. And it's all about small baby steps, right? Like do a couple of things, make that into your routine for a couple of weeks, couple of months, and then, look for another swap. And it's like a marathon, right? You're in it for the long run. There's no reason to do a whole overhaul of everything. You want to make it so it's realistic and that it's comfortable and that it works for the long haul.
And then sometimes it's fun and you're like, oh, that works. Let me try something else. So.
Yeah. And then I would encourage people to also, you can follow people who are, living this type of lifestyle. So it's just a kind of like constant reminder and inspiration and different ideas. It's like anybody else, any kind of other, influencers that you follow. It's just kind of adding those types of people to the repertoire and the feeds that you're seeing, and things like that. Just kind of keeps it top of mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. I don't think there's no other questions.
I hope that means I was thorough.
It does, for sure. Well, okay, I think that's it then. So there's some stuff coming in the chat. Oh, dryer balls are really good.
Dryer balls, yeah. Sometimes it's fun to go to like, these like kind of zero waste stores are popping up a little bit more. There's another one in Evanston, and I actually have not been. It's not a grocery store, but they carry things. I think they're on Lake Street. They carry things like dryer balls and toothbrushes, and it's like more of a eco product store. So sometimes it's just good to go in and browse. And you're like, I didn't even know that existed, or I didn't even know that wasn't an eco-friendly thing to do that I was doing at home. So it's kind of opening your eyes to that whole other way of doing things.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, like you said, start seeing more and more of that.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew, too, in the background there.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me your time, and it's something that I'm excited about, and I hope it was a little bit inspiring and a little bit informative.
Yeah, awesome. So just as a reminder, this was recorded and it's going to be uploaded to our YouTube site. So it's always there along with our previous recordings. So with that, we're going to sign off, and we thank everybody for joining, and have a great night.